Carl Jung once gave a warning so disturbing that even he seemed afraid to say it out loud. It wasn't meant for people who live on sweet illusions about love or human connection. He had looked too deeply into the human soul, and what he saw was terrifying. He saw that empaths, the people who feel everything, who carry the pain of others as if it were their own, are often treated like prey. Prey for a hidden hunger living in the shadows of human nature. There are people who survive by feeding on the energy of others. They don't hunt with claws or teeth. They hunt with stories of their pain, with their tears, with charm, and with a strange magnetism that pulls in those whose hearts shine the brightest. The empath, with their luminous capacity to feel, becomes a beacon. It begins early. Children who grow up in chaos learn to read the air around them with uncanny precision. A subtle shift in tone, a fleeting expression across a parent's face, the trembling silence before an explosion, all of it becomes data to the sensitive child. That child survives by becoming attuned, by learning to absorb every unspoken current. But what begins as survival calcifies into a lifelong gift or curse. As adults, these same empaths find themselves attracting those whose inner flame has gone out. They become magnets for the broken, the wounded, the ones who no longer know how to generate their own light, but instead feed off the light of others. Jung understood this as no accident. It is an archetypal dance, one that repeats itself in endless variations, from family ties to lovers' embraces, from friendships to professional bonds. The tragedy lies in the invisibility of the process. The feeding is subtle, almost imperceptible. It feels like connection, like intimacy, like love. It arrives in the shape of trauma confessions, whispered late at night, in the endless crises that demand attention, in the manipulative guilt of being told you are the only one who understands. The empath, mistaking need for affection, offers more and more of their light. And in this offering, they do not notice themselves becoming dimmer. Their exhaustion becomes normalized, their depletion mistaken for devotion. What could be more devastating than to realize that the very mechanism you once believed was love has been siphoning the essence out of you? Jung saw this and trembled. He called it the gaslight of the unconscious, when your intuition tells you something is wrong, but the other convinces you the problem is not with them, it is with you. There is a pattern, precise and chilling. First comes recognition. The parasite, whether they know it or not, identifies the empath the way a starving creature identifies food. They see the glow, the openness, the availability. Next comes the wound display. They do not arrive with aggression, but with pain. They tell you their stories, mirror your depth, allow you to believe you've discovered a soul as tender as yours. Once your compassion is activated, the extraction begins. They create crises that demand your emotional labor, pulling at your empathy like an endless reservoir. And just when you start to notice your depletion, they normalize it. They whisper that your exhaustion is proof of love, that your tears mean the bond is deep, that your devotion must hurt if it is to be real. By then, you are no longer a partner, a friend, or a child. You are a host. The archetypes emerge clearly in Jung's lens. The devouring mother who uses her child's empathy as a feeding tube for her unresolved pain. The wounded lover who mirrors depth until the mask falls, revealing a bottomless hunger. The colleague who cloaks dysfunction as sensitivity, making their chaos the responsibility of everyone around them. Each scenario follows the same script. The empath, trained to believe their worth lies in service, becomes the supply. The parasite, incomplete and cut off from their own capacity for authentic feeling, survives by taking what they have not cultivated themselves. Like vampires, they bask in the radiance of borrowed vitality, but can never feel full. Jung dared to articulate the shadow beneath empathy. It is not cruelty or malice. It is the unconscious need to be needed. The compulsion to fix, to rescue, to heal. the terror of abandonment so raw that one would rather be drained than be alone. He saw how this shadow made empaths perfect hosts. Their gift was not weakness, it was simply unguarded. And until the empath learns discernment, they are destined to repeat this cycle, mistaking sacrifice for love and martyrdom for meaning. What makes this more dangerous is the parasite's ability to manipulate the empath's very identity. They convince you that giving away your light is your purpose. They entwine your sense of self with their need until you no longer know who you are without being their savior. This is why so many empaths collapse under invisible burdens, never realizing that what they called compassion was often codependency, that what they called love was often depletion. But Jung did not stop at diagnosis. He offered a way forward, though it is not an easy one. He urged empaths to integrate their shadows, to face the part of themselves that seeks validation through usefulness, that equates exhaustion with love. To ask, what am I avoiding in myself by fixing others? Which wounds am I trying to heal vicariously? It is a terrifying mirror, but a necessary one. Only when you confront these truths can you move from being prey to being sovereign. The process is not about becoming cold or detached. It is about discernment. It is about recognizing that not everyone who calls for your light deserves it. That compassion must be balanced with self-preservation. That love is not proven by depletion. Jung reminded us that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And who you truly are is not a bottomless well for others' shadows. You are a being of light, meant to illuminate your own path. Yet, the moment an empath begins to withdraw their energy, the parasite grows frantic. This is the extinction burst of the shadow. They escalate crises, threaten, guilt, accuse. They say you are selfish, cold, abandoning. They weaponize your compassion against you in one last attempt to re-establish control. It is then that the empath faces the most dangerous trial, to hold the boundary even when it feels like betrayal. To remember that their desperation is not evidence of your cruelty, but of their addiction. To stay rooted in the truth that your energy is sacred, not infinite. If you endure this phase, something miraculous happens. You cease to be food. You begin to attract those who can stand in their own light. You learn to distinguish between genuine connection and parasitic attachment. You discover the profound difference between empathy and servitude. And for the first time, perhaps, you realize that your gift was never meant to be consumed. It was meant to awaken. This awakening, however, comes with a cost. You will lose relationships that were sustained by your depletion. You will be called selfish by those who thrived on your availability. You will stand alone in spaces where you once played savior. But this solitude is not emptiness. It is sovereignty. It is the moment when your light, no longer scattered into the shadows of others, begins to burn steadily within you. And when it does, something extraordinary takes place. You become a mirror that forces others to face their own unconsciousness. You no longer shield them from themselves by absorbing their chaos. You reflect it back, giving them the opportunity to grow or to flee. This is why awakened empaths are feared by systems of manipulation. They cannot be controlled. They cannot be drained. They cannot be seduced by guilt or bound by false obligations. They become dangerous in the best way possible, embodying a freedom that threatens every dynamic built on inequality. They do not abandon compassion, but they wield it wisely, like a blade that cuts through illusion. And in doing so, they show others that it is possible to kindle their own flame rather than stealing someone else's. Jung's final warning, then, was not just a caution against parasites. It was a call to arms for empaths to rise into sovereignty, to stop confusing depletion with devotion, to stop mistaking codependency for love, to stop offering their light to those who refuse to light their own. He urged us to remember that every act of unconscious giving is not love, but avoidance. avoidance of our own wounds, avoidance of the terrifying task of loving ourselves first. The world does not need more empaths who martyr themselves into silence. It needs empaths who awaken, who understand that their gift is not for consumption, but for illumination. To become such a being requires courage, the courage to be disliked, to lose false connections, to endure solitude. But on the other side of that courage lies sovereignty, the moment when you no longer exist to feed shadows, but to shine with the fullness of your own light. And so the truth reveals itself in the simplest yet hardest lesson. Your light was never meant to be currency for someone else's survival. It was never meant to be drained until you collapse, never meant to be proof of love through exhaustion. Your gift exists to awaken you first, and only then can it be shared in ways that multiply instead of diminish. Jung saw that once you step into this realization, you cannot return to unconscious giving. You can no longer pretend not to see who feeds and who contributes. You can no longer confuse chaos with intimacy or guilt with love. The cost of this awakening is real. Relationships fall away, illusions shatter, identities you clung to dissolve. But what remains is not emptiness. What remains is clarity. You find that one authentic connection nourishes you more than a dozen parasitic bonds. You realize that silence, once feared, is now the ground of your strength. You discover that your light, when guarded and honored, does not shrink. It expands, reaching farther than it ever did when you allowed it to be consumed. That is the heart of Jung's final warning and his hidden promise. They are feeding on your light, yes, but the moment you awaken to this, the feeding ends. The moment you claim your energy as sacred, you become untouchable. And when you rise into sovereignty, you do not become less empathic, you become more. You learn to love without losing yourself, to give without being emptied, to shine without being extinguished. This is not the end of empathy, but its evolution. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And when you finally embody that truth, no parasite, no shadow, no hunger can ever take it from you again.